Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a relationship that has defined a continent for over 100 years, and we're going to ask a question that not too long ago would have been completely unthinkable.
You know, we've always heard about the bond between Canada and the United States. It's supposed to be the gold standard for friendly neighbors, right? But something big is shifting, and it's forcing Canada to face a new and, let's be honest, pretty unnerving reality. So let's get right into it. Okay, so to really get why this situation today is such a big deal, we have to go back. We have to understand just how deep this alliance actually runs. This wasn't just built on some handshakes and trade deals. Nope, this was forged in fire. I mean, think about it. From the trenches of World War I all the way to the mountains of Afghanistan, this partnership was really built on shared sacrifice. And then you get institutions like NATO, where Canada was a founding member, and especially NORAD. That's the only binational military command in the entire world. It basically created a single unified defense shield for all of North America. That's how intertwined they've become.
Okay, but here's the thing that I think gets lost in all of this. This has never been a one-way street. In fact, you can make a really strong case that Canada has consistently been a critical security provider for the United States, stepping up in some of its darkest moments.
Just look at the facts. On 9/11, when American airspace was in absolute chaos, who stepped up? Canada. They landed hundreds of international flights, plugging a massive security hole. Then, in the years after, Canada spent 15 long years and lost its own people securing one of the most dangerous regions in Afghanistan. And you know what? Right now, today, Canadian and American personnel are sitting shoulder to shoulder at NORAD protecting the continent. This isn't one country depending on another. This is a deep, real, operational partnership.
So, what happens when that bedrock of trust starts to crack? What do you do when the language of partnership gets replaced with the language of, well, ownership?
And then suddenly, you hear the longest undefended border in the world being called an artificial line. I mean, whoa, that's not just a throwaway comment. It signals a massive shift. For defense planners in Canada, this was, as one official put it, completely uncharted territory. The old rulebook just got thrown out the window.
And in this new kind of weird territory, the threat isn't what you might think. We're not talking about tanks rolling across the border. No, it's something way more subtle, almost insidious. Analysts are now talking about a scenario where, maybe during a crisis, real or even made up, the U.S. offers to send troops into Canada to help, and they just don't leave.
Yeah, this quote just nails it. It's a Don Corleone-style offer you can't refuse. How does a smaller country say no thanks to that kind of help from a superpower it's so tangled up with? This idea, which used to be pure political fiction, is now driving a very real and very urgent debate inside Canada about its entire future. So Canada is stuck between a rock and a hard place. They're facing a partner they can no longer predict, and they've basically come to a historic fork in the road. All the old ways of doing things are gone, and now there are two very different paths forward.
So path number one, you could just lean in even harder. Deepen the integration. Basically give the U.S. what it wants. Buy more American stuff like the F-35 jets, meet whatever spending targets they demand, and just tie yourself even closer to the American military machine. Or, path number two, you do the exact opposite. You make a radical turn towards sovereignty. You start building your own independent capabilities, you look for new partners, and you try to build up a self-reliant Canadian defense industry.
And let's be real, that first path, more integration, is the one Canada's already on. And when you look at this chart, you can see just how dependent they are. It's staggering. Over 70% of Canada's big military purchases come directly from the US. That creates this deep-seated reliance on American tech, American parts, and frankly, American political moods.
Okay, so what about that other path, the one towards sovereignty? What does that actually look like? Well, it means dusting off a pretty obscure strategic idea from the Cold War, one that was designed for this exact kind of weird, asymmetrical threat. It's literally called defense against help. And the idea isn't to build an army that can beat the United States. That's just not realistic. The goal is way smarter. It's to have just enough of your own military and surveillance gear to handle a crisis on your own soil. That way, you can credibly look your giant neighbor in the eye and say, hey, thanks for the offer, but no thanks, we've got this.
And it's all built on three main ideas. First, you have to invest. Canada's territory, especially the Arctic, is super strategic for the US, so the investment has to be real. Second, it has to be credible.
You can't just have a paper army. Your neighbor has to believe you can actually handle it. And third, and this part's key, it's about non-alignment. This isn't about running off to join China or Russia. It's about being strategically independent.
So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, it would be a total revolution for Canadian policy. Instead of just buying F-35s, maybe you buy a mix of American and European jets. It would mean pouring billions into Canadian-made drones, satellites, and sensors. And it would mean shifting the whole point of the military away from overseas missions and back to defending Canada itself.
But, and this is a huge but, pulling off a shift this big, going from a century of pretty comfortable dependency to real self-reliance, well, that comes with a jaw-dropping price tag.
You see, it doesn't matter which path Canada chooses, the pressure to spend way more money is massive. That old NATO target of 2% of GDP, people are already blowing past that. The new number being thrown around in Washington and some parts of NATO is 5%.
And to put that into perspective for you, for Canada, hitting a 5% target would mean a defense budget of around $150 billion every single year. That is a gigantic leap from where they are now.
And this is where it gets really tough. This raises a fundamental question about what a country's priorities should be. Because, as this quote lays out so clearly, $150 billion a year is the kind of money that can reshape a society. You could build hundreds of thousands of homes, thousands of new schools, dozens of new hospitals, every year. So choosing to spend that on the military means you are actively choosing not to do all of those other things.
So in the end, Canada is facing a choice it never, ever thought it would have to make. It can keep going down the familiar road of integration, basically crossing its fingers and hoping for the best with an ally it can't predict anymore, or it can pay the incredibly steep price for true sovereignty. There are no easy answers here, and the decision they make is going to define their nation for the rest of this century. So the final question is, when your best friend becomes your biggest question mark, what's the real price of independence?